Hello everybody, welcome back to Sophisticakes by Mary. For this tutorial, I'm going to show you how I made this gorgeous deep eggplant colored 2-tier cake with some wafer paper filigree. This is a fairly simple technique and I will show you how I did it and we'll get right to it. We're going to use just regular 0 grade wafer paper and I am just cutting it with my quilting ruler, an X-Acto knife, and on my quilting mat, my self-healing quilting mat, in 1/4 inch sections. Now I'm using the measurements on the mat to help guide me where my cuts are going to be. Those mats are really nice. I will try to remember to leave a link in the description of this video of where you can get your own mat. This has saved me many times. And we're going to do this quite a bit. I think I did 4 papers worth of strips of wafer paper. Lost my power of speech for a second there. So I'm using about 9 of them at a time and lining them up. This is really easy to do. I did this the night before I put the cake together, so they would have time to dry. And this is just some wafer paper glue. I'm just lining up the bottoms together and dipping the ends in wafer paper glue, using a paper clip to hold them together, and then just wrap your strips around that. And that's what's going to give you the arched shape that you get with these. And then just cut off the excess and put a little bit more of that wafer paper glue on the other end and use another paper clip to hold it together and allow those to dry. Like I said, I left them overnight, but they could probably dry within, I would say an hour to where they'd be workable. But this was towards the end of my day, so I was running out of time. So I just left it for the next day. And I cannot claim responsibility for this idea. I will leave a link in the description also on who came up with this idea. Her name's Anna Shkinka. I always murder that name. She is a really good wafer paper artist, and she's the one that I learned this technique from. Now I did this quite a few times, and I did make some other patterns with these, but this is your base shape. And then there's one other shape that I'll show you how I did. And this is the other shape that I did. It's kind of a teardrop shape. I just took one piece, bent it around in an arch, secured the ends together, and I'm just wrapping the other ones around in consecutive sized rings, little loops. And that's our other shape. Now this is my trick I'm going to show you. Don't throw away your fondant, guys. These were all my scraps. These were the leftover fondant I had from previous projects that I had stored in a Ziploc bag in my refrigerator. Yes, that's my elbow that I'm using, but trust me, my arms are clean. So I just used what I had and mixed them together, and I got that gorgeous color. I think it's really pretty. So I had to do it in 2 batches. One turned out brown and one was a purple, and mix them together, and the brown makes that purple more of an eggplant color. Now you can see there's some little holes in there. Since some of these fondants, yes, they're still edible, but and stretchable, but being a little older, I added a little Tylose to it to kind of tie it together. It adds a little strength where it's lacking. Sometimes we're tempted to add more water or a bunch more shortening, but sometimes it needs a little something to hold it together, and that's what the Tylose is going to do. But don't add too much, otherwise it's going to be harder to work with. And I just rolled these out, this piece out, and I'm cutting the circles for the top. I'm going to do a panel technique that I've done quite a few times. And I find that is the easiest way to get those crisp corners on your cakes. Now this is already got some ganache on it, and it is chilled. And then I'm just put the piece on top with a little bit of water. That's what I sprayed on. There was water to get the fondant to stick. You could use shortening, you could use simple syrup. All of those work just fine. And I did the same thing to the top tier, but you don't see me doing the whole thing. But you get the idea. I know you guys are smart enough to understand that this is what I did on both of them. And then I'm cutting them to the size. I measured the height and the circumference of each of my cakes and cut the panels to size. And I'm just brushing on a little bit more water before I pick up that piece. Now, leave your fondant to sit after it's rolled out and cut into the shape for a good half hour. It just allows it to firm up a little bit. And since you're not worried about wrapping it around that top edge, you don't have to worry about it ripping and tearing. It's just, trust me, it's just easier to do it that way. Otherwise, it will stretch and pull out when you try to wrap it around your cake like that. And I'm just pushing any potential air bubbles to the seam that I had cut with an X-Acto knife and my ruler. Popped a little air bubble there, and then I'm cutting the excess off of the top tier. I just jumped right to the top tier because it's exactly the same, like I said. And I put both of these tiers in the refrigerator for about a half an hour so that it would be easier to cut that top off. And here you can see my filigree pieces all dried, and all I'm doing is removing the little clips on the ends. And to make these shapes, these different shapes, I'm just doing the same thing. I'm just attaching two of them together. And then using another with that wafer paper glue, which is just wafer paper and scraps and water together. I just popped it in the microwave for 10 seconds. And now I am using a straight blade to cut off the excess. I like to use these bubble tea straws, these big straws, to stack my cakes. I find that they add just the right amount of support for anything, even up to 3 tiers. Sometimes I do add some more of those plastic, more sturdy dowels for a 3 tier, but definitely for a 2 tier. Add a little buttercream, put the top tier on, and cut that excess off of that one as well. And right there, I'm just kind of pushing the fondant down to meet the bottom tier, just so there's no gap. If you allow it to soften for about 10 minutes, you can kind of push it down, as long as you're not trying to stretch it too far. And to attach these filigree pieces, I'm just using some piping gel and some toothpicks. You'll need some toothpicks to hold it in place until it has dried, which could be done in about an hour. Even a half an hour. Depends on different time. I guess maybe it depends on more the climate that you're working in. But for me, half an hour to an hour is probably just plenty of time. And I started putting the piping gel on the filigree pieces themselves, but then I was noticing that they were sticking to themselves. So I just brushed it onto the fondant. Now you could do the same thing on buttercream. It would work just as well. As long as it's not a real hot day and your buttercream is sweating, because then water and rice paper don't mix necessarily. So if you're gonna do that, or even on fondant on a hot day, if you have chilled your cake, you might wanna go ahead and think about using like a, what's it called? Cocoa butter. Brushing a little of that on the back side of your wafer paper pieces, because that will be kind of a barrier to the water. And then attach them just the same way with the piping gel. And I'm using my Barnabas Gold, my favorite gold, which I will have a link in the description box, and that link can be used to get you directly to the product. And I am affiliated with them, so it would be much appreciated if you did purchase through me. And I just used water to attach those. And here I am removing the toothpicks. I had brushed the fondant with just a little bit of water to give it that sheen. Now that sheen is nice at first, but it will dry to a dull finish again. And to get these toothpicks out, I find the best way to do it is to kind of spin them instead of trying to pull them straight out. So there's our finished product, guys. I hope you learned something, and I hope you got something that you can definitely use in your own arsenal of tips and tricks. And if you would, please take a moment to subscribe and share. I'd greatly appreciate it. So thank you guys so much for taking the time to watch my video. And if you'd like to watch some other videos, go ahead and click on the link to one of these other videos shown here. And if you would like to check out my other social media, I am on Facebook and Instagram under the same name, Sophisticakes by Mary. And please take the time to share, like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so that you know when I upload another video. Thank you so much, and we'll catch you on the next tutorial.